day before. So I was living in Colorado at the time, and I don't really remember what I was doing the day before. So I'm 66 now. I'm going to be 67 like next week, and so it was when I was in my early 20s. So I was living in Colorado. I was coming back to New York, Westchester, New York, to visit my parents. And so that the day of, I drove back, I think it's like 1,700 miles. So I guess I was driving the day before because we wouldn't have made it in one day. And so I got back to the home I spent most of my childhood in, and found out that a high school friend, my roommate in Colorado was also a friend of mine in high school, and we both we didn't move out together, we just both lived near each other, became roommates, and we went to a party of a high school friend. And I don't remember, no one's ever asked me about the day before. I was in Port Chester, New York. My parents lived in Rybrook, New York, which is kind of part of Port Chester, but it's a separate part. And then I went to a party that was in Mamaroneck, New York. And I really just remember, I do kind of remember walking out of the party. I mean, it was a little involved because I was definitely drinking, and I didn't feel like I was that high, but there was a young lady who was having the party who I kind of had a plan in my head. I could say I was too drunk to drive and have my friend drive me home so I could go back the next day and, ask this woman out because she was too busy at the party to talk. And almost back to my parents, I realized my sister I was driving my mother's car, and she needed the car, so I went back to the party, got the car, and I kind of remember, I can still see the image, and I should have realized then I was too high to drive, but in those days people weren't so careful about that, really. A lot of people drove, when they were drunk. No one ever thought twice about it, and so I kind of remember leaving the party, and then I remember being out of my body, looking down on my body, leaning against a tree, and there was a police officer kind of crouching over me, and it just, even though I saw my body looking not alive, it seemed totally fine. It was a very kinesthetic feeling, even though I didn't have a physical body. It felt like just a beautiful summer day, really the perfect weather, just everything seemed perfect. And, all the dilemmas of my young life just disappeared. And, it was very, I just seemed to know, I'm still trying to find the words to describe it. So there were no questions. Everything seemed to make sense. And it was like I knew all the answers, but there was also no answers needed. Yes, I fell asleep and drove into a tree. So the car was smashed totally, where when I looked at it after, I couldn't imagine surviving at all. And years ago, I had a Polaroid picture of it that my dad took, but I couldn't find it when I went to look for that. I was looking this way, but I knew behind me, and I have a vision in my mind, so I could kind of see behind me. It was all like being in a white light, but then there was a different shade of white light, like a big circle. And then there was a white light that was shaped like a human being, like an energy body of someone. And that was kind of radiating even a third shade of white with a little bit of gold around it. And that person shape said to me, "You have to go back. Your father wants you to stay." And, I knew at that time that it was my spiritual father, not my physical father. And in, looking and everything, knowing everything was okay, from that incredibly loving, wonderful, knowing all place, the world looked like everything was okay. So I went back into my body and came to 3 days later in the hospital. I was a little curious about it, and when I look back, it really, my life was pushing me in that direction and has ever since, and the near-death experience was a little less than gentle pushing me in that direction. So I had a couple of things happened before that. One, my girlfriend in high school introduced me to the book Autobiography of a Yogi. I was always a total jock. I read this book, that was actually a little after that, but I one time went to, took a class over the summer at SUNY Purchase, which is State University, and there was a cute girl in the class that I liked, and I talked to her, and she told me she was taking a yoga class there. I went to the yoga class. She never showed up, but I really liked yoga, and I got involved with the teacher there was a disciple of Sri Chinmoy, who was like a guru person. So I learned how, basically this basement room in the gym at SUNY Purchase, she transformed into like an ashram. Like she put, tapestries up and incense and everything, and she put them up every class and took them down at the end. And, but it was learning the body connection to breathing and to spirit and stuff like that. And I got interested in that, but it was, I didn't take it that seriously though. Part of it was there were cute girls in the class, to tell you the truth. At the time, not that much really, and I didn't really talk to anyone about it, but part of what happened was, again, my life has been moving me in this direction. I just started to meet people, and it's going to be funny because, so after my near-death experience and the accident, my mom convinced me to move back east, and I was sitting in my apartment one day, and someone knocks on the door, and there was a beautiful woman at the door that I didn't know, and she explained she was the sister of a friend of mine. And this woman introduced me to this Sufi sheikh, like a spiritual teacher. By that time, I was very curious about what happened when I had the near-death experience. And I didn't even know how to define it at all. Like nowadays, it's kind of a thing, and back then, and so basically she introduced me to this guy, and he started talking to me, and even though he was Islamic and I was born Jewish, he started to talk to me about Jesus and Mary. And when he talked to me about Mary's love of God, and that's how she let the Christ energy in, like that was the white light I was in. And just the way it felt, even when he would talk, and even now I think of it, I kind of get the chills, Then he started to talk about Jesus, and then I was like, that being behind me was Jesus. Again, just more of a feeling, kinesthetic, knowing level, and still those words ring very true to me today. I don't. I definitely, I'm always, again, to define these undefinable things, really, you're asking. So there are things in different religions I really like. I know, now I can see things in the spirit, and Jesus is a real thing, and Jesus is kind of the, head of the food chain now on earth, and so saying that, like, well, that has to be Christian, but there's parts of the Christian religion of what people do with that I don't believe in. There's a lot of things in the Bible that I think there's a lot of wisdom in and stuff like that, and the way it's written, people can use it to almost say anything. So when it's the loving and the healing and the happiness and abundance and those positive things, that's what I'm on board with. So I don't know, for a while I used to say I'm no religion, then I was saying I'm every religion, because there's things in Buddhism, Hinduism, Baha'i, I really like the Islamic religion. I ended up spending some years studying with the Sufi sheikh, and I learned a lot about that religion. And it's not about killing people. There's the essence of it that's very loving, and so that it depends on my mood, I guess, how I would answer your question. So right now I'm not saying I'm any religion. But there are things from every religion that most religions, I'd say, that I really believe in. And yeah, being a good person, that's a thing, yeah. I was 22. Well, luckily I have very good genes, and my body's very healthy. My dad is 90. He plays tennis a few times a week. He's super smart, And a nice thing, he has a girlfriend of about 6 years, and they're so in love. It's just great. Like I said, I fell asleep driving, and I don't remember that part. All I remember is being above my body, looking down, and people ask me that. Was it painful to leave your body? Did it happen before the accident? I was not conscious about that part at all. It's interesting because it's, I try to go inside and learn, because my perception of time during that was not the same as here, and I just think there's like more information I could get, but I also don't want to impose my imagination on it. So, and see, I start to talk about it, I just feel a lot of emotions moving, and I'm a very Cancer-y person, so my emotions are really important, and I perceive a lot of things through my feelings and that. So when I feel that movement inside, I kind of know there's information there, but I don't know what words to really put on it. I guess luckily I didn't know anything about any of this, and so I was kind of trying to guess. And I had some other experiences before that, the things I mentioned, and I don't know, my life was just moving. I do talks and lectures and stuff, and I realized between the car accidents and wanting to meet cute girls, things have really moved me in the spiritual direction in so many ways, and meeting people. And I realized I would like to take more credit for it, but the part of me that knew, part of me knew what I should be directed into, and was directing the part of me that's not so smart, let's say. But I started learning, first from the Sufi Sheikh, I started learning, and he could do some really cool things, very cool healing stuff, and he had a very strong connection to roses. And so I married that woman who showed up at my door and introduced me to him, and he did this rose ceremony that was really amazing, where the roses opened up and filled the room. But he also, part of another car accident was I went to visit someone up in Vermont who introduced me to doing polarity therapy, and he would have a rose bush there, and when the Sufi Sheikh would come visit him, the roses would bloom no matter what time of year it is, like about 3 days before he showed up. And that's a really cool thing, right? It was definitely a big kick in the butt, as I say, to do that. I had that image of what I saw. It's not like something I could easily dismiss, even though I kind of tried to after. Now it's a cool thing. I could talk to people about it, and I wouldn't even talk to anyone about it back then. Definitely, my near-death experience was part of making me aware of my spiritual sensitivity. And then, like I said, I just started meeting people that taught me. So, there's, I guess most people would call it our soul, that my soul would go to this place where souls go. That's, this beautiful, wonderful place. And there's other parts that, doing my spiritual work, hopefully I'm going to be completing my karma here, and that part can go to another really nice place too. So it's kind of like going to heaven, I guess, what people think of. That's what I think. So I'm not worried about being dead, basically, at all. All the things we're saying and talking about are trying to define this phenomenal thing that's beyond words. We're trying to define it in words. So when you're, I'm not saying that because you can't say it. That's the thing. You can't describe it. And so we can use words that there's a reference on the physical level, but it is even the part of just kind of knowing everything is, and I can connect into that now. And in one way, when I'm working with clients, it's kind of easy to see everything for them and even know what it means. For myself, I can kind of see everything. I just don't really know what it means. And it's set up that way in order to work through your karma, basically. Because, if you knew everything that was going to happen, you would avoid any of the problems and perhaps avoid the learning. And, it's like we have a mission to manifest our positive qualities and to learn certain things. And so we're not allowed to not do that, basically. I would say it's more like we're to be alive and be a part of the source. And I talk about it like it's kind of like an amusement park, and the part of us that was able, from this all-loving, knowing part of us, was able to look and choose to go to this amusement park and set it up. So in a way that it's like a game. And it's kind of funny because, I'm always trying to figure out how to say it, but it is like every part of us except for our mind knows this. And everyone, everything around us, other people seem to know it more than we do. And then it's like, how do we figure out this puzzle or this game or this ride at the amusement park when you can look at it that way? And it's easy for me to say that now, and there are definitely many times during the week where I'm like not feeling that. So but I think that part of choosing in, like reminding myself that I know, and like, when I'm trying to think of the specific thing. So journal writing to me is one of the greatest tools for this. And I do that every morning. So when there's, like, if I have worry or other things that are kind of not allowing me to be connected to my spirituality, I realize there's a mental part of that, but there's also the negative things in spirit come and try to push us into that. So when I can remember that, and even now just close my eyes and invite the positive spiritual things in spirit to get rid of those negative ones, then that happens. Well, it is part of the game of how do you get through that and stay on track. And journaling is definitely I do it not every day, but almost every day. If I see, like, I do it online, and there's a sign that shows which days I did it, and if I see, 2 days in a month, I'm surprised if I miss that much. Through God's love, we can be healed. And I also, we were talking about karma. I think we do have a choice to choose into easier karma. And it's like we have lessons to learn and our positive qualities to manifest. And sometimes we're doing that in a harsher way than we really need to. So there's ways to choose into a gentler way without losing the essence of it, but making life a little bit better. And through loving ourselves and loving those parts of us that totally mess up and don't do a good job every day, a lot of that can be accomplished. Some of that is not a conscious choice. Like, we do have the lessons we've predetermined that we're going to come here to learn, and those are going to happen no matter how much we try to be positive. And but it is, how can you love those things? And so we have different parts to us, and in the highest spiritual part, we're always at this very high, wonderful vibration, but that's not the part that gets necessary to attract stuff to us. So we have what I call our basic self. Some people call it the lower self. That's putting out a vibration that is more in line with what we have to learn sometimes, so it attracts things to us. And it's interesting because sometimes I notice something in my life out in the world has changed, and I don't really notice what I did differently. So that the part in the unconscious where the spiritual part's communicating to the physical part and putting that out there, and that's like, oh good, I did something right. I don't know what it is, but I know I did something right. There's the spiritual part of us that sends message to the physical part of us, and our conscious mind isn't aware of it so much. So we use our conscious mind to try to, be more positive and focused towards good things. And then sometimes the challenges that we experience in getting there, that's part of the strengthening and the amusement park part that I was talking about. And we just want to stay with that and stick with it and trust that we will create good stuff, and there's also the part of like looking to smell the roses along the way, where you're looking for the good things. And it's the way I've been talking about it recently, look for those little things to create the good karma. Like when you're, if I'm just thinking of a client that has some problems with her parents, and like look for those little things of joy with your parents. My dad has become like the nicest, loving man after he met this woman, when he was like 80, in his mid 80s. And it's like, wow, it seemed to correspond so much with something in my life. It was like, wow, that's something that I manifested that I'd wanted for a long time with my dad. So it just took time of staying with it. And, it was to the point with my dad, I said, I'm just going to get along with him the best I can, because he's getting old and I would feel terrible if he didn't really. And so I have love for him. Now I like him. And I didn't necessarily like him before, but it was something in me knew that I kind of had to do that. And so it's a great thing. And same with my work. It's like, I know I have to do it. There's, I'm a parent. I couldn't not do it. I don't know if have to is the right word, but something in me draws me towards that. And it's like, I'm going to honor and respect that. Even though I can't figure out a lot of it, I'm going to go with that movement and that flow, and I'm going to make it the best I can and do an excellent job along the way. I'm going to do a loving, caring job along the way. And even when I'm not, I'm moving in that direction to get to that place to do the right thing, really. Get to work and do the journal writing, do the meditation. Those are like the two most important things. And, I still work every day to make sure I am having that spiritual experience as much as I can. And it is, you can't deny when the near-death experience and you're out of your body and you see that stuff, so there's that reference. But you can know inside of you that that's a real thing. And there are times I've experienced that not during my near-death experience. When I work with people, I click into it so quickly. When I'm meditating, it's, even now, it's like part of me just wants to go there, and that's available for people without the damage to your body, which is much better. I guess the focus of my life is all spiritual and stuff. And before that, I was like a science and math kind of guy, and I still am. I'm very scientific about it, but like I said, I could see before that and after. No matter how much I was just trying to. The spiritual life is not easy. To me, I work every day. I do a lot of work, and I think that's important. The thing that changed, so many things changed. I'm kind of laughing because, I have these kind of breakthroughs and revelations. I still have them. It's like, I made it. And then I realized, no, I thought that last year too when I made it. So, I think the thing, I don't know. It did seem like a big turning point, but when I look at it logically, I was having things nudge me in that direction. But it was, there's no way to get that image and that feeling out of my mind. That's the thing. So, when you have, sometimes people say to me they believe in angels, and I try to say, no, angels are really real. So it's different when you believe in something as compared to when you can see it. And like now I can see a lot of things like that. And no matter what I might have thought before that, it was different than seeing. It's like being in heaven. People could say, I believe in heaven. No, but being there and seeing it and feeling it is a whole different thing than believing in it. What I explained is what I saw was it was all white light, and it was very kinesthetic feeling, and then the beings behind me and down below was my body. That was, I didn't see any relatives or just what I told you, and a lot of I'm closing my eyes because a lot of energy just starts to come in, and then but as I said, a lot of way I've even described it is when I start to hear people talk, and it just like rings so true inside of me, and I start to see the images and feel the energy in my body. It's like, oh wow, that it gives my mind a place to go with that information I had that I didn't really know what it was, but I knew what it was, Yes, it's a lot through my feelings and intuition and knowing. And I've learned so after something that I didn't even mention is something I noticed is when I touch people, my hands would become very warm. That was a thing I hadn't noticed before that at all. So it got me to start exploring eventually hands-on healing, which led to meeting more cool people, teachers of spiritual stuff and healers, and then I learned how to be more visual and hear things and see things from this thing of I would just touch people and they would feel better. It would get warm, and I would know stuff about them through touch, and I learned to expand that through without the touch, basically. I think the biggest thing I do is I can help people connect to that energy that we're talking about. I can clear off the negative energies around people. I can clear off the negative spiritual things around people. The part of integrating the basic self, the conscious mind, and the spiritual self. I almost always work on the phone and video, and I have for many years, but once in a while, and a client was in New York City, and I have other clients there who like to see me in person, so I went in, and it was kind of cool because I went into their hotel room, and their energy was just so nice, and I thought to myself, wow, I do such a good job. And it was just kind of cool that but then there's a part of the energy, and then there's a part of getting the mind and the body aligned with that energy. And it's kind of like you got to go like this and try to meet right here. So it's building up this positive spiritual connection. I mean, the energy's there, but it's expanding it and clarifying it, and then sort of getting rid of the negative things we're trained to do, we're, programmed to do in the world and from our parents, everyone trying to work in the world. And so when it meets like right here, and then you it's like self-generating that positive energy and then helping build that energy up. So I do past life readings. Sometimes there's patterns from past lives, almost always past lives, and clearing negative forms. That happens almost every session. Yeah. I'm Doc Brock on TikTok. So, exactly. There's the spiritual gift is coming to us all the time. So when we can open up to that, it feels really good, and it's good, healthy, and it's very positive.